Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Cabinet meeting. To start with, just the usual announcements, please. So there are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. So if we do hear the fire alarm, it's real and we need to leave the building immediately. If we can exit out of the back door behind us and lead off into the War Memorial, please do not leave. Join us in the War Memorial so we can make sure we've counted everybody in and out and we know you are all with us. The meeting will be webcast. It's live on the internet, but you can also follow it later on YouTube should you choose to, so it is recorded. Can I ask everyone in terms of microphones that you use them so you can be heard clearly, so clear the microphone towards you. The microphone stem can be moved so you can make yourself heard. In terms of mobile phones, could I ask everybody, please, would you switch them onto silent or to switch them off, please? We have a packed agenda this evening, and I do have public contributions from the floor. We also have pink papers, confidential items, so I will need to check whether or not we need to move into that at the appropriate point. But right here, right now, do we have any apologies for absence? There aren't. Any declarations of interest on the agenda this evening? None. If any member has any declaration of interest later in the agenda, they'll need to declare it. Andy, if we get to the paper points, sees you're speaking, you're the only councillor this evening. Urgent matters, there are no urgent matters. Minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of January. I have the minutes of the 7th of January, and can I ask colleagues, are you happy for me to sign them as a true and accurate record of the meeting that took place? Okay, I shall do so. There are no announcements at item 5, but we do have a motion referred from council, the family farm tax motion. The motion related to a resolution of council on the 19th of December. On the agenda paper, it sets out the bullet points that we're asked to consider. The first bullet point is straightforward. It asks us to write to the Secretary of State, DEFRA, and to the Chancellor to outline the council's position as it was voted on that evening, and that's straightforward for myself and the co-leader to do. In terms of the others, I think it's just worth referencing the support that we offer to our rural businesses and the wider rural economy. It is a diverse economy and it goes beyond agriculture and farming in our rural communities. It includes a broad business base from a range of sectors, including light manufacturing, digital tech, professional and services. These businesses tend to be located in small business parks on farms and other areas, often located within larger estates as well as within our rural villages. The council already provides support to businesses wherever they are located and in whatever sector they may operate in through a range of activities such as the advice on growth and resilience skills and employment, events we hold for them, particularly, for example, around rural economies, access to training for their employees, showcasing their businesses as part of our placemaking and marketing work, and also grant funding. Through the Rural England Prosperity Fund, we're able to support 8 rural businesses in this last year with grants of up to £30,000 to help them with the diversification and the improvement of their business. We are also supporting town and villages through the Centre Fund in shop fronts and supporting shops in those centres, in those district and town and village centres. So we support a range of businesses that are located in our rural villages, our farming industry and the industry more broadly in our rural economy. We recognise this diversity of the rural business community, particularly in farming and agricultural sector, and the challenges around diversification. And so we support also in terms of planning and environmental considerations that many of our farming communities face. We also, in terms of our support for larger rural estates, held a recent meeting with them, both to strengthen the dialogue that the council has with them, but also to agree a set of actions to better focus our support. So this includes setting up a rural forum to act as a platform for closer collaboration, support for rural businesses with raising their profile and highlighting their significant role in our local economy. Also the contribution to the environment that they make in terms of also marketing and awareness and raising the campaigns that make a difference to their businesses, the footfall to them. In terms of familiarisation and visits to rural estates for our officers and members, we're also organising this as part of our ongoing dialogue. And in addition to all of that, we are also launching another rural grant funding scheme building upon the Rural England Prosperity Fund, which will provide capital investment to support the diversification of the rural economy, as well as improving the visitor infrastructure, and we're engaging with businesses in the rural community to help shape that scheme. There is a huge amount of work already going on in the council It is in all of our strategies. I know the motion asks for a specific strategy, but the rural economy and the rural community sits within each of the council strategies. If you look at the council plan and then look at the community strategy and look at the other strategies we have, it sits within each of them. And if you look at the list I've just read out and the amount of work that we're already doing, we are meeting that need significantly. So I would suggest, colleagues, that happy to write and we will fulfil the motion's requirements. But in terms of what we've read out, I looked down the bullet points. We're asked to engage with local farmers and community representatives to support in the way that we can support them as the council can provide. We're already doing that and we're very happy to continue to do that. In terms of the council administration to develop a rural strategy, well, each one of the bullet points that sits underneath that is already part of the ongoing work that the team are already delivering on. So I would suggest that we continue to do that work, because actually the feedback from those rural businesses at that recent meeting was hugely positive about the difference and contribution this authority, this council makes to them and their community and their businesses. So from that perspective, colleagues, I would suggest we write the letter and we acknowledge the amount of work that is currently going on by this council that meets the bullet points on that motion. Are we comfortable with that? Does anybody like to make a contribution? Annalee?
Yes, I think that's a very good summing up. And I'm very happy for you to write a letter. But I would also like to remind all of the councillors in the council that one of the areas of the rural community, and specifically the rural farms, has had problems with in the past is in DC, when they have sought for applications to be supported and have not had the support from the same people who put the motion forward. So I would like consistency, and for those councillors that propose this motion to remember that they have to fulfil their commitments in DC if they truly believe that this is what they want, because it is they that have made it difficult for our council to support rural farmers in the past.
Thank you, Annalee. Colleagues, anybody else, or are we happy to proceed? Laura?
It was just to say, when you actually read it out, I think it was just so impressive to actually look at what we're doing. I'm sure that's not exhaustive. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that we're doing in relation to housing as well. But it's really impressive. Yeah, and so I'm very happy to support.
I just want to thank the officer team. I mean, I'm conscious that, they are doing so much in this area, let alone everywhere else. So that's a reflection of their hard work. I'm happy to proceed and accept that's the way forward on that one. We're good? We shall do. Right, moving on to the substantive agenda this evening. I've got a number of public speakers, so what I propose to do is take the local plan item 9 first, followed by the Camrose paper item 13, and then we'll proceed from there down the standard agenda. So the first item is the local plan and revised local development scheme, and Councillor Konechko to introduce.
Thank you very much, Paul, and good evening, everybody. I think it's fair to say that the process of updating this local plan has been a challenging one. I've been the portfolio holder responsible for the plan for just over 18 months now, and we're already on to our third national planning policy framework. Each time the rules changed, we're forced to reassess the situation and tweak our approach. And despite the difficult hand that we've been dealt with at times, one thing has remained constant and clear throughout, and that's from day one, finalising this local plan as quickly as possible has been a priority for this administration. That's how we protect our borough from unwanted speculative development, and that's how we ensure that our area is well placed to continue to thrive in the coming decades. That commitment remains as important as ever. The paper that's in front of us this evening demonstrates how we're going to deliver on this priority. As many people will be aware, the latest changes to the NPPF, which were announced just before Christmas by the government, are so significant that we've had no choice but to go back to the start of the plan making process once again. We've explored every possible option to avoid this scenario, but the advice we keep getting is that we must return to the beginning. And I know that's hugely frustrating. I feel that, and I know a lot of my cabinet colleagues do as well. But we've already begun to make headway with our call for sites, which has been running since the start of January and concludes in just a few days' time. The things are already happening. The wheels are in motion. We're moving as quickly as we can to make sure that we get the right homes in the right places with the right supporting infrastructure. Our borough deserves nothing less, and that's why I'm bringing this paper forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So we've got one member of the public contribution and one councillor contribution. Mr. Capner, would you like to come forward to the speaker spot? and you know it's the big button in front of you here. You got it.
Thank you. I haven't started yet. I think that a document has been circulated, which is a summary of what I'm going to say. As you may know, I'm Gareth Kapner. I am an experienced chartered town planner. We are concerned about the timetable and processes of the local plan timetable as set out on page 12 of your report. The timetable does not accord with the government's timetable set out in paragraph 237 of the NPPF, which requires an examination in public before the 11th of December 2026, if a further Regulation 18 stage is proposed. The draft local development scheme's indicative timetable schedules the EIP for spring 2027, so even this later date is not guaranteed. Furthermore, the lengthy timetable does not have the Regulation 19 stage at which the Council adopts its policies until summer 2026, which is a full 2.5 years since the consultation on the original Regulation 18 local plan update. Whitchurch Town Council proposed in a letter dated the 8th of January to Council Connecticut that the Regulation 19 stage be brought forward to before the 12th of March, in accordance with government advice in the NPPF and in paragraph 1.5 of the Procedure Guide to Local Plan Examinations. This would allow the Council to adopt up-to-date policies for the protection of the natural and built environment and other matters such as climate change, affordable housing and interim housing sites, which would then be supplemented by an addendum after consultation on the additional housing sites required by the NPPF. The Borough Council has sought advice on this matter, which I understand relates particularly to the weight that can be attributed to these up-to-date policies. I have given evidence at hundreds of planning inquiries, and it's quite clear that the weight attached to policies which have been decided by council resolution, even prior to an EIP, carry greater weight than policies which are still subject to consultation. The interim housing allocations would also help to overcome the 2.94 years housing land supply deficit. Consequently, we request that the Council adopts up-to-date policies either by bringing forward the Regulation 19 stage before March 2025 or by confirming those policies at the same time when further consultation is carried out only on the additional housing sites under a second Regulation 18 consultation. The second consultation should be well before the proposed date of autumn-winter 2025 as set out in the current draft LDS to meet the government's overall timetable. Thank you. Oh, sorry, always forget that.
Andy, your turn, please.
Thank you, Leader, Councillors. Okay. In its forward, the Cabinet portfolio holder states that the Council was making, and I quote, rapid progress under the old plan, but we all know that when in opposition, certain councillors now on the Cabinet did their level best to delay or derail the local plan, culminating in it being delayed for over a year. Had the local plan update proceeded to completion, it's still questionable whether we would be in any different position now, having to start over to look at revised housing targets. Much is made about the reluctance to embrace this change, and I quote from page 143, as an administration, we don't believe that the changes are in the best interests of our residents. These changes we know are as a result of the Labour government honouring its manifesto commitment to build 1.5 million new homes in the next 5 years. The Lib Dem portfolio holder is conveniently forgetting that his own party had in their manifesto, chapter 14, a commitment to build 1.9 million homes in this parliament. The simple fact is that building more houses in the interests of many residents who are not able to afford to leave home to rent or buy houses. We have thousands on our waiting list. We have people in our borough being offered housing 300 miles away when they are served eviction notices. The housing market in Basingstoke is badly broken. We have our most acute housing shortage in living memory. Only today there was a feature on unaffordable rents on Radio 4, and last night a panorama programme on deadly mould in properties. The median salary in Basingstoke and Dean is £40,000 a year. The price of flat is £200,000, 5 times median salary, and the price for a 3-bed family home is over half as much again, 7 to 8 times median salary. The median rent is £13.50 a month. That is 40% of the median gross salary, which means your average worker is in rent poverty, expects to pay over 50% of their disposable income as rent when it should be less than 35%. Under the risk assessment, page 167, lack of political support, no mention is made of what happens if that risk is realised. Nor is any mention made of local government reorganisation, which could mean this council disappears before winter 2027 when adoption and publication is timetabled on page 164. The real risk, as I see it, is that we continue to let down our residents. This administration's focus is on millionaires, reducing their tax liability and keeping house prices high through the prevention of development of badly needed houses to house our less affluent residents who comprise a significant and growing proportion of our population. What I don't see in this document is how the council will seek to establish a 5-year supply from its current 2.94 years mentioned on page 147. That needs to be addressed right now. The need for residents to be housed is right now. Thank you.
Andy.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Gavin and Andy for the comments and questions this evening. I'll begin with Andy's point. So first of all, I think you raised the issue about the delay to the local plan process. There was one administration, one cabinet that made the decision to delay the process. It wasn't this one here. If there has been a delay to the local plan, then that rests on them. It was their decision. If they now don't want to own that decision, then that is their choice. But it was not a decision that this cabinet made. The second point, you made the link between building more homes, between increasing the housing number in the local plan and lower house prices. I know we've had this debate many times, but there isn't necessarily a clear link, given we've got the broken housing market. Giving consent to more homes does not necessarily lead to the building of new homes, which does not necessarily lead to lower house prices. The fact that we have thousands of outstanding planning consents proves that point. We don't need more planning consents granted. We need the existing planning consents to be built out. And whilst the Labour government has made some pledges towards helping that, the focus sadly has been on what's easier, which is forcing local authorities to build more homes rather than forcing developers to actually build these new homes. And that's where its focus should lie, in my view, given the number of outstanding planning consents we have. And that's a picture that's replicated across the country. You also made the point about local government reorganisation, which I agree is absolutely fair. We've got a choice. We could either decide that, well, local government reorganisation is going to happen, we can stop the plan. And you know, it's something that is potentially worth considering. However, I think the bigger risk is doing nothing, because the timetable for local government reorganisation is still very sketchy. It's early days of the process. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's our commitment, as I said right at the start, that we want to make sure that this plan is finalised as quickly as possible. I hope that will be in advance of local government reorganisation. If it's not, then at least it means that when we have that debate with the authorities with which we merge around the next local plan, we're in a much stronger position. And as Gareth has already pointed out as well, the fact that we'll have another Reg 18 and potentially a Reg 19 on the books gives us some potentially limited, but some additional planning weight as chair of DC, Andy, as you all recognise. So hopefully that addresses the points that you've made. Gareth, you've made some interesting observations, and we've spoken about this at length as well in the past. In terms of the timetable, making sure that we conclude this by December 2026 is absolutely within the deadline that the government has set us. Thereafter, what the government then does in terms of making sure that the plan goes to examination is out of our hands. So our job is to make sure that we get to that December 2026 deadline, and that's what we're very committed to. We've got this timetable, which you'll see in the LDS. We have challenged officers to speed up the process, and the result is what you see in front of you. you make the point about going to Reg 19 before the 12th of March this year, having taken advice from a number of sources, both within the council and externally. We are told that that's not possible. We have to go back to the drawing board, and we've got officers actually in the room. And Jenny, I'll be very happy for you to explain, perhaps very briefly, the reason for that. But you make some good points about the timetable, Gareth, in your comments, and I would be very keen to meet up with you after this or discuss by email your suggestions for how we can speed up this plan process. Because actually, if you've got some insights into where we can potentially speed things up whilst staying true to our ethos of consulting with the public and making sure that this plan is sound and will be passed by an inspector, then I'd be very happy to hear your suggestions, and we can run those past officers and take advice on how that works. So hopefully that's answered your points, and I'll hand over very briefly to Jenny just to explain why the advice we've been given is that we aren't able to go to Reg 19 by the 12th of March.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Leader. So briefly as possible, it's our advice that the transitional arrangements in the National Planning Policy Framework Annex 1 don't apply to the Council because the previous Regulation 18 consultation housing figure was more than 80% below the new local housing need figure of 1127. And I doubt myself as to whether that's the right number off the top of my head. Therefore, in order to allocate sufficient sites to meet that need in full, that's around 4,500 additional homes. That requires us to go back a stage. That's why we're out for a call for sites at the moment, so that we can find other sites that we might be able to bring forward to meet the 5-year housing land supply that Councillor McCormick mentioned. There's just too much work in updating evidence base and the sustainability appraisal and the habitat regulations assessment in order to meet that commitment to allow us to proceed at this point.
Anything else, Andy? Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, I think that covers the points. Hopefully I've responded to the comments and questions that Andy and Gareth have made, but very happy to consider this either outside of this meeting or by email if you still have any concerns.
Thank you, Andy. Obviously, we have the paper in front of us, colleagues. Does anybody like to make a contribution? I've got Gavin first.
Yes, thank you. Just responding. Thank you, Andy, and I appreciate the enormous amount of work that you've done on this. Obviously, the previous administration set the timetable in September 22, and you diligently stuck to that timetable and making good progress, obviously, until the NPPF, the new government announced the NPPF was changing. An indicative number came forward that was much higher, and at that stage, actually, we didn't have enough proposed sites to meet that number, even if we accepted all of them, including Upper Swallow, which I know has been something that in the past Councillor McCormack has spoken against. You're absolutely right, though, Councillor McCormack. It was, in terms of the risk with local government reorganisation, it is very strange for the Department of Housing, Communities and Local Government to announce on the 13th of December that they've finalised the NPPF, confirmed the numbers that local planning authorities have to stick to, and saying that they should need to get on with it and treat it as an absolute priority. And then only on Monday, the 16th of December, the Department of Housing, Communities and Local Government announced that the Devo Mayor local government reorganisation and how that was the priority for local government in the immediate future with very tight timescales. It's almost like the two departments, which are actually the same department, didn't talk to each other about their press releases. It's a very confused message, but unfortunately, as you know, we don't have much influence over the government. Perhaps you do. So I totally agree, we do need to get more numbers, but I think the other thing to remember with local plans is it's the biggest decision we make. In 100 years from now, none of us will be here, but the planning decisions we make will be. And so it's important we get it right, and therefore I endorse the new timetable and appreciate the work that the officers are doing to try and get us as quickly as possible back on track and have the protection of that land supply.
Thank you, Gavin. Laura.
Thank you. I was, I suppose, a bit confused by your comments, Councillor McCormick, in relation to mould. I'm not sure what the link is there with and the local plan, and in relation to building more housing. I mean, we take the issue of mould exceptionally seriously. We're now required to, in relation to legislation, and we welcome that. And in relation to the Housing Standards Department within this council, massive work is underway, and the housing associations are also required. So I think they're two very separate issues. We need to be very mindful of what the stock is and also what's out there. But that doesn't relate to, if we build more houses, we won't have that problem. Or, and I think it's a very confused message. But in relation to housing need, just be absolutely clear that our commitment to deliver affordable housing is an absolute priority for us, and that is socially rented housing. And in relation to your comments about housing people hundreds of miles away, in relation to the register, that is not the case. That is not happening. And so, again, it's a very confused message. But again, absolute commitment to that. We are driving forward, and we have been driving forward the delivery of affordable housing. And in relation to our target and what we achieved last year, we've outmet that, and it's very difficult. It's not easy at this time to be delivering affordable housing, and massive pressure. Devolution isn't going to help. It's just not going to help, but we are committed to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anneli.
Yes, I think in response to Councillor McCormick's comments, I think they're very unfair, actually. We as a council, all of us collectively, agreed that the numbers needed to be slowed down because the infrastructure needed to be kept up. And I think I'm right in saying that on a number of the motions that went through 3 years ago, it was unanimous that the numbers be slowed in order for infrastructure to be called to catch up. And what we've done since we came into administration was to try our absolutely hardest to meet the needs of the residents of the borough. So concentrating on social rented housing was an absolute priority. So I think the accusation that we've only been interested in meeting the needs of the millionaires of this borough is extremely unfair. And Councillor Laura James in particular has been working extensively on trying to get the numbers back up, because we inherited a complete failure of the previous administration. They hadn't even met their target of 385 social rented houses in the year that we arrived. But what's happened, and I think Councillor Konecki and Councillor Gavin James have said, is that your government, the government that is of your party, has actually gone and done something which I think is tragic, because we were on course, we had a plan, we had the support of the residents, we were super focused on affordable housing, we were going to try our best within the margins of what is a very complex system. And now the whole thing has been blown up by the numbers that have been imposed upon us by the Labour government, at the same time as the changes and amendments to the MPPF. And now they've launched a great big grenade into the local government, which means that the whole of the local government reorganisation is going to cause huge difficulties across the board, across the country, to meet the housing targets that we've been given, let alone the housing targets we had before. So it's going to be a complete mess. And I have to say, I will be absolutely amazed if Angela Rayner gets her targets as a direct result of the local government reorganisation she's now imposed upon all of us, that wasn't even in the Labour Party's manifesto. So I would say be very, very careful about what stones you chuck into the water, because the mess that is going to ensue is directly as a result of what's happened in recent months. And all the while, we as a council are now going to have to incur huge costs as a result of having to go all the way back to Reg 18, when actually what we were trying to focus on was doing the best for our residents across the board, both on the council housing side, which is a very important part for us, but also on the interests of the wider borough, so that we keep up with the infrastructure requirements, so that we try and address the problems with sewage and the water systems and the road systems and the lack of GPs and the problems that all of our residents are fully aware of. And so I think it's you know, I think it was quite a that was quite a low blow you just delivered us. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalie. Anybody else? Okay. A couple of points to make, really. Gareth, thank you, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think you appreciate there's very clear advice that we've been given. The critical point here is to get a local plan on the books as quickly as we can. And we take advice and guidance from our officer team, and we also take any commentary that is given by people like yourself. And thank you for that. And we will take it seriously and consider it in the round in the way that we should. So your contribution is welcome, and thank you. And you will appreciate we have to continue in the way we do, but we're listening. And that is actually something I think that reflects on our other contribution this evening, Councillor McCormick. Me and Andy have been out, I think, to nearly every single parish council thereabouts across the entire borough, listening. And this matters to them. Second time round. And I'm just going to make it absolutely clear. The people we've been talking to are not millionaires. That's a really low blow and a very stupid comment. Because the people we're talking to genuinely care about the local plan and how it affects their lives, their villages, their towns. And our borough has a huge rural hinterland beyond Basingstoke that we are equally responsible for. And we must manage that in the best way we can to deliver for those communities. And what many of them need is socially rented housing. That's critical for them to sustain their villages, to sustain their communities organically in a way where growth is sustainable, where they don't have GPs or NHS dentists, or the very things that less than 6 or 7 months ago you were on the streets with your Labour colleagues campaigning for in the general election. And now you're in government. And so the responsibility of government to deliver on those infrastructure issues is huge. You've only been in for a short period of time, and we all recognise that. But that change is something we're all looking forward for. And that's really important, the change we're looking for. We came in with 130 affordable homes in the pipeline. That's what we inherited. 130 was in the pipeline. The officer team working with us have now put 464 affordable homes into the pipeline this year. That's the kind of work that's going on. That's the difference the officer team are making, and I thank them for that. The work that's going on behind the scenes with our housing partners to deliver far more socially rented homes. We've got many down across the line. That North many down 3,500 houses will deliver at 40%, 1,400 affordable homes for Basingstoke and Dean. There is no question of where we stand on the issue of delivering affordable housing for Basingstoke, and the facts stack up. They back up every single time what we're doing. We are looking at small sites across the town. We're looking at sites around the borough where we can deliver on brownfield and really, really regrettably, greenfield, because when you lose the environment, you lose the environment forever. But sometimes you have to deliver. So many down on a greenfield does make a difference to all those people you're talking about. And we've been brave enough to make that decision. So I'm not into playing silly games. This is far too important for that. This is about us as 54 councillors working out how we deliver a local plan that gives a framework-led, policy-led direction to developers who wish to develop in our borough, and we encourage those developers then to meet our policies, of which a key part is socially rented housing and affordable homes, of which is infrastructure that goes with it and the investment we need. And we all know we inherited one hell of an infrastructure deficit over many years, over many, many years. And that's going to take some time to turn around. So I'm not going to criticise you, Andy, and the government and the Labour government for that, because you've only just come in and your feet will be held to the fire on that in a few years' time. But my goodness me, do we need to see change in that way that makes a difference to people's lives when it comes to those infrastructure services. So on the point about GPs and the ICB, we need to see them supported and their debt and their issues resolved positively so that we can deliver for GPs and NHS dentists and all those other services. On our roads and the infrastructure, it's really difficult to see the County Council cutting it again because of its financial difficulties. And then it is regrettable to see the Hampshire County Council in such financial difficulty, but that reflects on us, that impacts on all of us and our agenda as well, and what we're saying here in terms of delivery of affordable housing. But it's the government that moved the goalposts on this in July. We were ready in May of last year to go to a Reg 19 with a local plan that was widely consulted on, had over 3,000 responses, 7,000 individual responses to the different elements of that local plan, and we were ready to go. Now, the government chose to move the goalpost. That's their mandate, that's their choice, and we are now reacting to that. And we will continue to put our residents' best interests first, because that's what our responsibility here is, to serve and to deliver a local plan as quickly as we possibly can. So thank you for your contributions this evening. It's been an important debate. Colleagues, we have a recommendation on page 144 of our agenda, 2 bullet points to agree that the new local development scheme, including an updated timetable to the local plan, has an effect from the 12th of February, and to continue to take a proactive approach to plan making in the borough to take account of the implications of the new NPF, which takes account of other comments that we've had this evening. Ollie?
Can I just say one other thing? Because I absolutely agree with everything you said, Leader. But you know, also the hospital. You know, the current MP for Basingstoke brought the current Prime Minister to our borough, and we were promised a hospital. You can't increase the targets on population for a hospital that was designed and built for a population of 54,000, then expect all of us residents to just carry on regardless when the population is now 187,000 and rising, and then fail to do what you promised before the election and what the electorate... It's not remotely misleading.
Andy, we're not having a debate across the floor. No, we're not having a debate across the floor, Andy. We'll leave it there. We have a recommendation on page 144, and we have the 2 bullet points, and we're going to take them in order. Do we agree with the recommendation? And we'll move on to the next paper. Thank you very much, everybody. The next paper is item 13, the Camrose. I have 2 speakers again. That will be on page, quickly go to it, forgive me colleagues, 247 of the agenda. I have item 13, the Camrose. I have 2 speakers. Jack, would you like to go forward? Jack Miller. Evening, Jack.
Good evening. As Chair of Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, thank you for the opportunity to speak today on a matter that's not just about football, but about fairness, community, and the future of something truly special in Basingstoke. Basingstoke Town Community FC appreciate the open discussions, the collaborative approach, and the recognition of the football's importance to this borough. We're encouraged by the proactive engagement of this council, and the commitment is shown into working with us. However, we must be clear that tonight's not just another meeting, it's a moment, a rare and pivotal moment where, for the first time, we have a real opportunity to be heard, to make our case, and to ask you, as leaders of the borough, to do what's right, and us as a club no longer be at the mercy of circumstances beyond our control. For too long, legal processes have dictated our fate, leaving us without a voice. This council now has an opportunity to do something for the future of Basingstoke, which you will thank. Since the loss of the Camrose, it hasn't just been our first team that suffered. Our women's team, our full-time college programme, our 16 boys, girls and academy teams, our pan-disability football sessions, our open half-term football camps, our community initiatives and the other sports and community groups who use the previous clubhouse as their home. Every single aspect of our community engagement has been disrupted. We've been displaced, we've been forced to adapt, yet we've continually proven our effectiveness at driving forward despite imposed limitations, and as a club, we've already demonstrated our ability to run a sustainable, growing and well-managed community club. With your support, we can build something truly extraordinary, not just for this generation, but for the next. That is why we value the positive steps already taken by this council, the dialogue, the willingness to engage, and the recognition that this issue must be addressed. But tonight we ask for a real commitment, not just in words, but in action. Those most affected must have a say in reinvestment, and we need clear assurances that the proceeds from the Camrose sale will be reinvested where they rightfully belong, into Basingstoke Town Community FC. As a club, we are buoyed by the proactive action this council is taking and the forward-thinking discussions it is having with us. So tonight, We implore you to recognise what has been taken and seize this opportunity to put it right. This is the moment where the morals of this unfortunate saga must be not just heard, but acted upon. With this council's backing, we can use these funds to help secure a home of our own, a place that's not just a home for a football team, but to a community institution that will serve its people for many generations to come. I'd like to finish with another thank you to the council for their continued proactivity in regards to this important topic and for your consideration of our 129-year-old football club. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And given the first mistake I've made of the evening, Gavin, would you like to introduce the paper? Start as we to go on.
Jack's just done a fantastic job of introducing it. So this is our portion of the Camro site. I think we all know the backstory, so I won't go into great detail on it. Essentially, last year we learnt the Sovereign Network Group were interested in purchasing the area of the site owned by Basron. That's an area we have never owned, we've never leased, we've never had any control over it. Just prior to Christmas, we were informed that they'd agreed to purchase that piece of land, making inquiries about what we might do with our land, and those discussions have started and got to this point very quickly. Obviously, the situation for us is the land strip that we own is actually quite awkwardly placed. It's literally a land strip. It'd be hard to access and use independently. So we are facing a choice tonight of we can either agree to sell the land to the Sovereign Network Group. That would, and it's timely that we did the last paper first, because if we can't deliver any sport on the ground, we can't deliver football there, the least we can do is go to another one of our priorities, and that is affordable housing. And this scheme will allow us to increase the number of affordable homes that Sovereign can deliver on the site, adding to the number we've been working on in the background. So that's one option. The other option is to do nothing. There is no way really we can use the land effectively for anything else. It would just sit there as a liability to have the rubbish cleared, etc., on and off. So it does seem a very limited choice. It's unfortunate what's happened to the football club. We recognise that. There are a number of football fans sitting around this table. Some of them are in the FA Cup, some of them not so much, but we won't mention that. So I'm absolutely committed to the long-term future of the football club. What we can't change is the past, but what we can shape is the future. And I'm absolutely determined that Basingstoke Town Football Club will never be in the same position again. We absolutely want it to have a home of its own. Sustainability was mentioned by Jack, and I think it's really key. We don't want a situation where the club is heavily indebted or reliant on sponsors, one significant sponsor for its survival in the future. We must never repeat the saga. I can't change what's happened, but we will do everything in our power to make sure in the future there is a long-term future for the football club. They have a home of their own. It's not easy, because I don't want the club to be heavily indebted to get to that place. But we are working on it, and it won't be easy. It'll be tricky. It'll take us a little while, but we're absolutely on the same journey. We share Jack's vision for the club in the long term, and we'll keep working towards it. This is a start of recognising that by using the receipts from the sale of this to support the ambition of the football club in getting a home of their own in the future. So I ask Cabinet to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Gavin. Okay, going back to the order. Andy, you're next on this one.
Thank you, Leader. So some of this is on pink papers. I don't know if what I'm going to say is going to stray onto that. But
well, let's just be clear. Are you going onto pink papers or aren't you going onto pink papers?
Well, it depends on what I'm going to say next, doesn't it?
Well, no, it doesn't, because it depends on you being clear. If you wish me to move into pink papers, we will have to move the fact that the public is excluded from the meeting.
Well, the only thing I can think of that might be in pink papers is...
Hang on. What are you going to... You have to make... Don't tell me what you're going to say. Tell me, do you want me to move into a pink paper?
No, I think we can stay outside.
Okay, I'm going to trust you that you don't stray into pink papers then. Thank you.
Okay. This is, I don't think the council can honestly say that it's covered in glory as a result of the Cambro saga. The fact that we've had a covenant that didn't appear to be worth the paper it was printed on when it came to the ransom strip. What I would like, and this is in the public domain, is some kind of assurance that the proceeds that you get from the sale of your part of the land is going to be used for the promotion of sport, especially football in the borough. Not least, I think implicit in some of the decisions that were made was this expectation that we'd have a like-for-like replacement for the Camrose. I don't think we have at the moment. I don't think the club is in a financial position at the moment to potentially progress a new stadium. It's a huge commitment. I think we do owe it to the residents to be, football supporters in particular, to be more supportive going forward of the football club. The only other thing I would say is that, we've got an application in front of us from Sovereign. The land sale went through with Basron. I think Basron have acted despicably in all of this. But once that land sale came through, I think it was fairly obvious that we would end up selling our land to the same developer. And I shall leave it at that.
Thank you, Andy. Gavin, do you want to respond?
Yeah, in relation to the council covering themselves in glory, I totally get from a borough point of view, this is not where we wanted to end up. What I will say, and I don't need to defend those that came before us, and this is the first time we've made any kind of decision in relation to this, is that the land that was owned by Lord Camrose, he chose to sell it to Basron. Basron chose to buy it. I don't know why. We weren't in the room because it had nothing to do with us. It was a private transaction between two developers. And their decision then to sell it to Sovereign, again, had little to do with us. So it's a private sale. So I don't think the council's been heavily involved. In relation to the covenants, it's worth checking on the law around covenants. Covenants are the responsibility to protect the party. So the covenants that were in existence were for the football club, to say that the ground couldn't be sold from underneath them. When Rafi Razak acquired the football club in 2001, he acquired that covenant. It was up to him to play that card if he needed to. When Lord Camrose Estates in 2017 agreed to sell the ground to the same person, the covenant that meant the ground could only be used for footballing purposes also passed to Rafi Razak. So the only person who could stop Rafi Razak doing what Rafi Razak wanted to do was Rafi Razak. At no point was the council in the room, because that's not how it works. So that's the situation. So I think whilst I totally get why people are very upset and emotional, and I am as well, it's actually a bit mean to blame the council because we weren't involved in those transactions or sat in the room with those transactions. So I just think it's worth reflecting on that. We can only look forward from here. And as I say, it's making sure that the football club has a safe and sustainable future, has every success, becomes the club that I think a growing town deserves to have, works its way up, and we support it in its way up the leagues, because there is obviously a huge economic benefit of having a successful football club. What I would say is it's not something the council and taxpayers can fund, it's for the football club. So if anyone really wants to get behind the football club and really wants to support them, they probably need to spend a little bit less time on the Gazette website making comments and more time in the terraces buying a ticket for every home game to support the club properly.
Thank you, Gavin. Anybody else like to make a contribution? Kerry.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thanks to Jack, Adam, and Liz. It's been a pleasure. Communication is two-way, and so the fact that you've been openly talking to us has been a massive thing. You wanted some assurances. The assurance I can give you is, while I'm sports portfolio holder, is that I will always be here to talk to you, and we both want the same thing. We want the success for Basingstoke Town Community Football Club, and we will work together, and you will know exactly what's going on at all points. So just again, thanks, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Anneli.
And I don't know how many people listen, but maybe the Gazette would like to say that, as Councillor James and Councillor Morrow said, football for our administration is extremely important. A successful football club in this town is extremely important. And it would be fantastic if a consortium of very successful companies, we have many companies in this town, could get together to support the grassroots football, that would be fantastic. But as Councillor James said, never again can we end up with the reliance on one entity or one individual. But there are so many successful companies that we're so proud operate out of Basingstoke and Dean. Wouldn't it be fantastic to have a consortium supporting you?
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, just a couple of points. I think there has been an awful lot said in anger, an awful lot said on pages of social media, an awful lot said in terms of where we have come from. I'm interested in what this decision will present to full council, not only in the fact of our choice here as Cabinet to move the recommendation, if we do so, to dispose of the land in the way it's proposed, but to recommend to council so that council will have to make this decision to reserve the proceeds for the sale of the council-owned land to invest in football facility improvements in Basingstoke. So the 54 of us are going to be part of this decision, and we will have to make that decision, and I think we should, and that's why we're recommending it. We could not be clearer in the recommendation that is in front of us or the intent that we have. We couldn't be clearer in the positive conversation that we're having with the Community Football Club, and also joining with you in the success and the trials and tribulations of what it's like to run a football club, because we hear you and we understand it, but we also respect it, and your enthusiasm and your desire is also worth saying all of the other football that goes on in Basingstoke and Dean. You are a key part of it. Not everything, because there's so much else in terms of the grassroots, the whole range of football that goes on, that's a part of the conversation as well. But the decision in front of us, colleagues, is on page 249. It is a decision to approve of the disposal of the land of the Camrose, as set out in those 3 bullet points. Bullet point 2 is a delegation that I draw your attention to. And then item 4, bullet point 4, is to recommend to Cabinet to request to Council to reserve the proceeds from the sale of the council-owned land to invest in football facility improvement works in Basingstoke. Are we happy to make that decision? Are you all in agreement? Agreed. Thank you very much. Back to the main agenda, everybody. And we go to item 7 on the agenda, which is the medium-term financial strategy and budget update report over the next period. And it's Councillor James.
Yes, thank you, Paul. This is the latest step on its journey through this council for the medium-term financial strategy. Kicks off in April and runs us through till 2029. This was already put before scrutiny. It's also been out to public consultation. It now comes back here before making its final destination, which is full council in a couple of weeks' time. Very little has changed in terms of what was put out to the public. There were a few tweaks because the government obviously put through their final funding settlement for the year. It was perhaps a little disappointing in terms of the amount of money that they will be funding us for. The main issue being the national insurance increase that obviously was announced in October in Rachel Reeves' budget. As the national insurance employer contributions were increased, that's costing this council £700,000. The government are only going to protect £300,000 of that, so we are going to be £350,000 worse off, and that's obviously had an impact on our deficit into year 4. So the public consultation responses, we didn't get quite as many responses as we did to the local plan consultation. We fell just about 7,000 short. But there we are. I'm taking that as everyone's very much more happy with my budget than perhaps your local plan. I don't know. So that's why we've had very few responses, but all the responses we got were generally positive about what we're looking to do. So the main things in there are the fact that our green team that we've had for the last 2 years has been very successful. They're not only saving the planet, but also saving people money. That becomes a permanent team if this budget is approved in February. We're also putting some money behind the new initiative, which is around tackling poverty properly within the borough for our anti-poverty strategy. We're also looking at the well-being of young people for how we deliver our events with additional events targeted towards young people as well. We recognise that it's actually the young people that probably suffered most during COVID, being locked away for 2 years, missing vital dates. So improving wellbeing is a very key focus for this council as we look to have an energetic workforce to grow our economy on behalf of the government. So those are the key features that we'll carry on to full council. It is a balanced budget for the next 3 years. Not many councils can say that. There is a challenge in that fourth year, but I'm sure, as we have every other year, we'll rise to that challenge. So I ask Cabinet to approve this going to full council on the 27th of February.
Thank you, Gavin. Do I have any other contributions? Okay. Just a couple of quick points, just to say thank you to the officer team for the work that's gone into this and Gavin in terms of putting the budget together. I appreciate also that you've been in front of Resources Committee in terms of advice and scrutiny, and this will now take it to full council on the 27th of February. I think it is important to say that we are probably one of the few councils that are not cutting services. We have an amazing position where we are able to invest in our front line, which we're doing, able to deliver on the priorities that the residents have told us they care about over and over again. We are one of the few councils that is investing in brand new play areas, actually delivering new play areas, not cutting them, not taking them away, but investing in new play areas in our communities. The anti-poverty strategy will become really important as we develop it, because we are serious about tackling both food poverty, fuel poverty and child poverty. Different motions over different years have been taken to the council on those issues, and it's right that we draw them together in a really concerted attempt with our partners to make a real difference. We want to see the numbers of people in poverty come down in our borough, and that's why that strategy is incredibly important. The actual work we do, for example, in our social inclusion partnership, is a real example to set in how we can bring partners around the table to achieve that. As Gavin rightly says, the youth event as a new item in the agenda, and I know Kerry's been working on that with the team, is really important because it will show a commitment to our younger people in terms of extreme sport and sport as part of the festival, as part of our summer programme, and that's an important addition. And all of that is being offered to our residents for just 10p a week more. That's what Basingstoke and Dean is asking you to contribute. Respect the County Council's position. They had their cabinet recently. Respect the fact that they debated whether they were going to increase council tax by 15% through a referendum, and they chose not to, and they chose to go down the route of a 5% increase. That's their choice. That will have a different impact on the council tax bills that everybody gets. But Basingstoke and Dean offers all its services for just 10p a week more. And that is a massive value for money offer when you consider where a lot of our borough councils are and district councils are in the country. So we continue to run the council in sound finances because that's what we are here to do. But we're also investing. And I think that's a really important message to put out there. We are actually investing in improving services. We are an improving council. That's part of our ethos. So thank you again, officers, for pulling this all together. This will go to the council meeting on the 27th, and Cabinet, do you agree to send it there as the recommendations on page 13, 14 and 15? We agreed? Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, item 8 on the agenda, is the capital programme update and strategy report, page 85 of the report. Gavin.
Yes, I'm sure members have read this report and the strategy that sits alongside it. The headline news is whilst if you read the surface of it, there is a net reduction in the size of the capital programme. That's rather misleading. So there is an extra £22.5 million going in. There's £37 million coming out. But most of that money coming out is actually sort of fake money, if you like. It was money that we were going to loan to the Many Down scheme. They're going through a different loan process now, so we don't need to. And we've always had within our programme a £10 million for property investment, which was conditional on us receiving £10 million from selling property. The market slowed down. We're in the last year of our property investment strategy, which means that we're not going to be as active next year, and it seems silly to put that money in only to declare an underspend at the end of the year. So there's a few changes made. This, of course, will go to full council as well. It's important to recognise that this is heavily influenced. This influences the revenue budget, because any money you spend is no longer earning interest. So it's a very careful balancing exercise, and the two go together. Overall, we do have a £131 million capital programme, which again, compared to other authorities, is probably the highest you'll ever see, particularly at the moment, because that money is alongside the normal 106 monies that you always see coming in and going out again is the replacement of the aquadrome and more improvements to the leisure park. A significant once in 30-year investment is going through our books at this time. So that's an exciting project, and I know that the EBOM's progressing well. Can't wait to see that happen, because that's going to change transform our leisure park into an even better place, and hopefully spark a whole load of new investment from external agencies. So that's the capital programme going to full council.
Thank you, Gavin. Colleagues, anybody else who would like to make a contribution? Nope. We have the recommendation in front of us on pages 86, noting the recommendation of the Cabinet and the recommendation of the Council, and that again will go to the Cabinet Council meeting on the 27th of February as proposed. Do we agree? Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 10, adoption of vehicle charging strategy. Andy. And they've got Councillor McCormick to speak on it.
Thank you, Gavin, and thank you, Paul. So I'm very proud to bring before everyone this evening the borough's very first EV strategy. This administration recognises that the Borough Council has a vital role to play in terms of supporting our residents in making the switch to electric vehicles. As this paper explains, this is partly about installing EV chargers on land that we own throughout the borough, and it's also about coordinating our other stakeholders. And by that I mean the County Council and also private EV charger operators, to make sure that they play their part as well. And this strategy covers both of those aspects. The strategy's benefited from the input of the Economic and Infrastructure Committee, as well as contributions from local residents as part of the recent public consultation. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who has helped shape the strategy along the way. The feedback that we received from the consultations has been supportive, and you can see that in the appendix in the document. And it's also helped us to improve the strategy, which is ultimately what the public consultation is about. For example, we were told that our target for ensuring that each ward in our borough has at least one EV charger wasn't ambitious enough. We agree, and we're now finalising a more challenging target that's based on the number of chargers that we have per head of the population. Once that's been set, it will form part of the borough's wider suite of key performance indicators, which we'll be discussing at Cabinet later on in the year. We need to act on climate change. I think we all agree on that. We've declared a climate emergency, and encouraging people to switch to EVs has got to be part of that solution. We're already making a lot of progress, and we're starting to see the change. And this strategy means that our actions are targeted as effectively as possible, and that's why I encourage you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor McCormick, you're up again. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Leader, councillors. So, charging. As an EV owner, I welcome this strategy. I don't think it goes far enough. 6 years on from the council declaring a climate emergency, EV ownership is on the rise. Many residents and some councillors, including myself, have made the transition to electric vehicles and are looking at further moves to reduce carbon emissions in the home. The council hasn't made this easy, nor has Hampshire County Council, nor the previous government. On page 184, mention is made of the need for 24 chargers in Culver Road. That's for 180 houses, and with 1 in 5 new vehicles being EVs, that will soon not be enough. Culver Road is but one example of new town estates like Brighton Hill, Popley, Southam, Winklebury, Buckskin, Blackdam, where communal parking means it is impossible for EV owners to charge their vehicles at home. They do not have driveways, nor garages with electricity, and in most cases, council-built garages are too small to take modern cars. I question the commitment of Hampshire County Council to Basingstoke. They appear to have prioritised Winchester and Eastleigh for on-street charging, and I'm not sure why. We can't be pleased with our track record to date. A glance at the table on page 202 shows us joint second bottom with rapid chargers, mid-table with total chargers, and the number of chargers per 100,000 residents is at 63. Compare and contrast that with the number of petrol and diesel pumps per 100,000 residents. Your predecessor as council leader, when pressed on his administration's woeful lack of progress, said, "We're not a petrol company." That attitude says it all about the previous administration and why it needed to go. It's still early days of this administration to see a significant step up in charging provision. Yet in spite of this, I have reasons to be cheerful, despite the fact that Hampshire is dragging its feet and we are having more and more parking schemes being installed under the PERA scheme without chargers, when we've been saying that from now on we'll be building them with chargers. I hope we'll progress with more chargers outside community halls and shopping areas, especially our district centres. Chilham now has one, Brighton Hill sorely needs one. The nearest chargers serving nearly 10,000 residents of driving age in my ward are at BP Grove Road, Shell Pride Piper and Travelodge Winchester Road, all at least a mile away from the vast majority of residences in my ward. I have recently been approached by disabled residents getting EVs who are worried about how they will charge them with no driveway and the nearest charger over a mile away. So I would like to think that this is a step forward, and I would like to see some more initiatives to make sure that our disabled and vulnerable residents who are going to get EVs are able to keep their mobility, which they currently enjoy with petrol vehicles. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Councillor Konechko.
Thank you very much, Andy, for those comments. So I agree. We don't have enough EV chargers, and that's why we've created this strategy. It's one of the first things I asked officers to do when I took over this role was we need an EV strategy, we need some ambitious targets, and that's what we've got, and that's why I believe this strategy is really important. You've made the point about Hampshire's role in this, and I think, as I said at the start, we have a role to play as a borough council in terms of building chargers on our own land, and we have been, and we've made really good progress in that. And part of our role is to bring in other stakeholders, including Hampshire and including private operators. And we've been working on that as well. Hampshire have been a lot slower than I would have liked them to have been. They've made several promises in the past, which they haven't kept, and it's meant delays. However, we are on the verge of being able to install our first batch of on-street chargers in Basingstoke through the work that's been done with Hampshire. Obviously, they are the authority that's responsible for our streets and our highways, so they need to take the lead in installing those, but we've been pushing them and we're going to see some progress over the next few months. So I hope you'll join us, Andy, in celebrating those and using those when they become available very soon.
Thank you, Andy. Anneli.
Yeah, just in relation to the table that Councillor McCormick referred to, when you look at West Berks and you look at Wokingham, just for the residents' benefits, those are both unitaries, so they're not beholden to Hampshire County Council to help them to have got to the stats that they got to. Whereas I think that's a really key kind of piece of information to contextualise that data.
Well, that's a really important point. I mean, this strategy is our strategy. Of course, it's alongside working with Hampshire County Council, but it doesn't have to make the point about being remote from your residents as a very large council in comparison to us as a district, as a local area in North Hampshire, where we might be far more in touch with residents to be able to meet their requirements, exactly as Councillor McCormick has pointed out. So actually, bearing in mind the comments this evening, colleagues, we have a recommendation on 174, 2 bullet points: to consider the comments made during the recent consultation on the draft EV charging strategy as set out in the paper, and to adopt the updated version of the vehicles charging strategy to guide future action. Do we agree, and are we happy to take the paper? Are we agreed? Brilliant. Okay, colleagues, on to the next paper, which is item 11, which is the SIL spending protocol. And I'm going to ask Andy to introduce the paper. And Andy, we've also got a brand new recommendation in front of us, which we'll go through.
We have.
You,
apologies for hogging the limelight this evening. I don't think I've had any papers in front of Cabinet for a few months, and obviously they've all decided to come on the same evening. But I'll be quick, and this is my last one. You'll be pleased to know. So we all understand the importance of investing in our borough's infrastructure, whether that's roads, schools, healthcare centres, community facilities, or sewage networks. However, the challenge facing local authorities across the country is securing the funding that's needed to support all of this much needed investment. Our borough is no exception. We need to upgrade our infrastructure to ensure that it keeps pace with the growth in our housing numbers that we're being told to deliver, and that's going to take money. There's no other way of doing it. A major chunk of that funding currently comes from the Community Infrastructure Levy, CIL. So it's vital that we invest the CIL money as effectively and as fairly as we can. And that's where this paper comes in. It sets the framework for how we're going to use CIL money that the Borough Council receives. In particular, it explains how we propose allocating the CIL funding between the Borough Council and our town and parish councils, which we have many, as well as those areas that aren't parished. We want this CIL funding to be invested. We don't want it sitting in our bank account. We want this CIL funding to make a difference, and we want this CIL funding to help our borough to continue to thrive. And this paper will play an important role in making that happen. For this to be a success, the Borough Council and our town and parish councils need to work closely together. I think that's fairly obvious for anyone who reads this paper. And that's why I've proposed that we revise the recommendation of this paper ever so slightly this evening. The recommendation now is for Cabinet to approve this paper so that it can go to consultation to give our town and parish councils an opportunity to help us strengthen it further. We need to listen to the views of people who are going to actually help us deliver the infrastructure that we so desperately need. They've collectively got a huge amount of experience, and we should be making the most of it. And I look forward to hearing their ideas, subject to, of course, everyone here approving the paper. So thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Anybody with any more contributions? So we have a brand new recommendation, as Andy has pointed out in front of us for the paper. Item 1 is to process the spending of strategic CIL, including how and when the council should engage with external infrastructure providers. 2, the process of spending neighbourhood CIL in areas without town or parish councils. Item 3, subject to a 3-week consultation with town and parish councils on the CIL spending protocol, to delegate authority to the head of planning and infrastructure in consultation with the cabinet member for strategic planning and infrastructure to consider the consultation response and to approve the final CIL spend protocol and to make future updates to the CIL spend protocol. And 4, that the cabinet member for strategic planning and infrastructure, in consultation with the cabinet member for finance and property, be delegated authority to make any urgent funding decisions outside of the bidding process. Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, I was a little bit too slow there. Just before we send this out to parishes, it was just on page 235, which is in the sort of published strategy. And it's section 4.6. So if we're there, it's just been pedantic, perhaps on a word, but we say this is for areas without town or parish councils, and in that paragraph we say where relevant the parish meetings. Now, there's a definition that is it a parish assembly when you haven't got a parish council, because the word parish meeting might just add some confusion when you're talking about it not being a parish compared to the section with parish. I don't want to cause any concern. So.
I actually think that parish meeting is a defined term and it means something to people who know what it means. But we'll ask officers to double check just in case.
I'm getting clear nods from our parish colleagues in the audience. So from that perspective, I think we know where we stand on that one. So those are the 4 recommendations in front of us. Honestly, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, can I just say, I think this is an excellent paper, and I'm really pleased to see that we're going to consult with the town and parish councils. I think that's wonderful. I think that demonstrates how we as an administration really value the Dean part of Basingstoke and Dean as much as we do the Basingstoke. So I think that's an extremely important part of the process, and we very much look forward to 100% engagement from the parishes in the borough.
Thank you, Anneli. Anybody else, or are you okay too? Okay, we'll take the recommendation as. Are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy. Next item on the agenda is item 12, Housing Allocations Policy Amendment. Councillor Laura James.
Thank you. This report recommends Cabinet approve an amendment to the Council's housing allocation policy. It's also known as a scheme of allocations. The proposed amendment is to raise a maximum income threshold to £60,000 gross annual income for family households to qualify joining the housing register. The rationale for doing so is based on the analysis of the data from the Office of National Statistics regarding property prices and income levels different households would require to be able to purchase an open market property which meets their housing need. It would be unfair to restrict access to the housing register to households who are demonstrably unable to meet their own needs based on this evidence. So it's a one recommendation in it. It's in page 241 to raise the maximum income threshold from 50,000 to 60,000 gross annual income for family households to qualify joining the housing register. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Arnold?
Sorry, so thank you for that. Do we have any idea what the number of the impact will be in the increase of number of people on the list as a result of this increase in threshold?
I don't have it to hand, but it's a very small number. So it's a very small number of people. But I'm very happy to circulate that to Cabinet and also to full council. But sorry, I don't have it to hand.
Okay.
No, I didn't want to put you on the spot like that. If it makes it equitable, that's fantastic. If it was going to result in thousands more people.
I love it.
It's not thousands more, and I did know it, and I can't remember the numbers. I don't want to say it tonight.
Don't worry.
No, that's fine. I shall shoot you outside of this room. No, it is not going to add. It's not going to add thousands, but I will confirm that with you. Or sorry, I'm sure it says it in the report somewhere.
That's good. Indeed. I mean, it's important to say, okay, colleagues, brilliant. Page 241 is the recommendation, as Laura has pointed out. It's also worth saying this has been to the Resident Services Committee. It's been through consultation. There's clear evidence as the reason why we should be taking this particular decision. So on the basis of that, colleagues, are you happy to make the recommendation? All agreed. Brilliant. The next item on the agenda is item 14, page 313 on our papers. And it's over to Councillor Gavin James. It is. The annual property paper. The annual property plan, 2025 to 2026.
Yes, fortunately I can remember this because it was just an audit last night. So this is our annual property plan. It's the last year of our property investment strategy, but this plan looks at our operational property as well. There's a number of activities in there, most in confidential papers, but it is business as usual. We are rapidly getting to the point where all our properties are moving into A and B in terms of their ECG rating, which is very important. Making progress on Basing View in trying to make sure that we get all those sites being active for us. Huge progress in the town centre, a difficult time in the town centre, but actually Basingstoke is proving more resilient and bouncing back better than anyone expected from the COVID years when we thought everyone had just disappeared online. So the positive story, and the accommodation is now, or property is now generating almost twice as much money as council tax. So it's delivering real returns. When people say we're a rich authority, we're not rich, but we have a great number of assets to provide us with that wealth. That means we can deliver services other councils can no longer provide. Huge thanks to the property team, and obviously the highlight of the year was doing a lot of work in the background around the lease. Never before has so much time been spent on a single lease, but if it means ICE is in Basingstoke for the next 15 years, which we seem to have achieved, then I think that's time well spent, and that's probably for the community, that's the big highlight of the year.
No, well said, Gavin. Anybody else like to make a contribution? No. The recommendation in front of us is on page 314, and it is 2 bullet points to recommend to Cabinet to note and consider the comments of the Audit and Accounts Committee as detailed in Appendix 3, and to approve the annual property plan on page 25 to 26 contained within paragraph 3 of the report, 3 to 4 of the report. Colleagues, do we approve the paper? Agreed. Okay. On to item 15, the Many Down Governance Committee papers on 331. Honor-Lee.
Yes, just to state that this is a governance requirement. Unfortunately, we can't disclose to the public the contents of the documents because they're on pink papers, but suffice to say, we as an administration are extremely pleased that we have finally got Many Down over the line and are really proceeding at pace now to deliver that strategic site that was supposed to have been delivered many years ago. So, unless members wish to ask any questions that are on the pink papers, and we can go into a private session. Does anybody want to raise anything? No? Can I therefore ask you to approve the recommendations to Cabinet?
Thank you, Ollie. That's item 33, page 332 for reference. Items 3 bullet points there to approve the LLP 2025 budget, to approve the business plan, and then update attorneys as set out. Thank you, colleagues. Item 16 we don't need. Item 17 we don't need. That brings us to...
Can I just come back on a really awkward question that I had from Honor-Lee and I'm going to give her an answer. So the answer is we're unable to estimate, but unlikely more than a handful that is what we estimate. But what we will do, of course, is monitor. So rather than give you a written answer, I'll just give it to you verbally. Thank you.
That's what you call teamwork. I like that. I do like that a lot. Brilliantly well done, everybody, and thank you for your attendance this evening. The meeting's closed.